it's almost like a snowball going down a hill. You start off small, you collect knowledge, you make connections, you make connections, you make a good product, you make a good product, and then the people that you made connections with look back on you as the person who knows things and the person who made a good product. And now officially you're in the industry.
Keep it nerdy. Keep it nerdy. Keep it real. Nerdpreneur, you know I love my work. Life's a game, so I'ma take my turn. Nerds deserve to put their passion first, so let them rap a verse so they can all be heard.
Yeah, my nerdy passion basically is drawing.
We are dice retailers.
Correct. I'm a breeder of tarantulas. I'm importing tarantulas and some other critters.
I am a harpist. I do mainly Celtic harp, video game songs, songs from nerdy TV shows.
I connected my love for close-up magic with being a scare actor.
Nerdpreneur, you know I love.
All right, well, welcome to Nerdpreneur. This is where we have conversations with nerds making money with their nerdy passion. And joining me, as always, our fellow co-host, nerd co-host. I don't know how I want to refer to you yet.
I'm a dude. I'm not the dude because I can't take that from the Great Lebowski or the Big Lebowski.
The Big Lebowski. We just lost half of our fans right there.
Can't take that from the Big Lebowski.
And your name is Frank.
Yeah, my name is Frank.
And we have our first guest, inaugural guest, Ryan, on the podcast.
Hello.
Welcome, Ryan. How are you doing?
I am pretty okay.
We wanted to invite Ryan on to talk about some of the stuff that you're doing that sounds kind of cool and exciting. I mean, what is your nerdy passion and how did you actually discover that?
Yeah, so I am a small independent board game designer. I work with a bunch of my friends at a small company called Zephyr Workshop, where we do design, development, and publishing stuff here in Seattle, Washington. We have mostly gotten our foot on our flagship game, Aegis Combining Robots, which is a combining robots tactic tabletop game.
When you say Aegis, sorry, it's Aegis Combining Robots?
Aegis, Aegis, like the shield.
Oh, okay. How did you get into actually like designing board games and wanting to do that?
I started designing board games and getting into that probably in high school. I was going to a technical school to be a machinist when I made some friends at a local college while I was in high school. And they were going to a local game design school. They kind of like dragged me along, got me to get started in some things, started some game jams, help out wherever I can. And eventually I started to play more and more board games because fun thing about game development or game design, a lot of people start wanting to make digital games, but it's really hard to make digital games when you don't have a programmer. So we were a squad of 4 or 5 people with no programmer. Well, let's just make a board game.
That makes sense.
Aegis was the brainchild of Zephyr Workshop's director, my best friend Breeze. And from there, we just kind of spent 5 years developing, designing this game, going to conventions all over the country, showing it off to people and businesses. And eventually we ended up kickstarting it, making around $50,000, I think, printing around 2,000 copies, and just about sold out now. I think we actually have like single-digit numbers of copies left and gearing up for a reprint and release of a second edition, a sequel, coming out, I think, sometime next year.
Sometime in 2022.
2022.
That's very cool.
Awesome, man.
Can you tell me more about your game and like what
how do you play that thing? What is it about?
So Aegis is a combining robots tactics game where 2 or more players each create a team of 5 robots to fight their opponent's team of 5 robots. The box comes with like 100 robots, so it emphasizes a lot on team building and synergies and stuff like that.
But this is essentially robots fighting robots.
That's exactly what it is.
I'm in. All right.
It's great. It's fantastic if you love like Voltron, Transformers, Power Rangers, Evangelion, lots of Evangelion references. Yeah. Even Pokemon to an extent, like art style wise. It's pretty cool. It's a colorful game. It's very eye catching and it's really fun.
So, okay, is it the kind of thing, you know how in Power Rangers they each have their own robot that eventually combines at the end of every episode? Does that happen?
There is combining. There's a lot of combining where you can take 2 Two single letter robots, or two robots in general, that are kind of like different lettered. So the robots are separated into 5 categories: assault, evasive, guard, intel, and support. AEGIS. It spells out the name of the game.
Nice.
Acronyms are fun. And you can actually combine them, pay some energy, which is kind of like the generic resource in the game that you use to do pretty much everything. Pay some energy, mash them together, and it actually forms into a new robot depending on the pieces that you combine with. That has, its own piece in the box, brand new card, new rules, all that jazz. And you literally just mash your guys together as the game goes on to get like bigger, cooler, Voltron-y robots.
I am sold, man. Like, I love this idea.
You're incentivized to combine further into the game as your robots get damaged, because once they combine, they lose all of the damage that's on them. It's kind of like almost like a free deal plus an upgrade later on in the game. So there's a lot of decisions in when you combine, what's the right opportunity. A lot of robots can do various actions when they combine as like a once per game kind of thing. So it's like, when's the most tactical place to use that? And then from a design aspect, it helps a lot with getting people to actually get to that endpoint of the game, because the game is very front loaded. You start with your most decisions that you have to make and the most complexity of your units at the start of the game, where you have 5 independent guys that can all do their own independent things. As the game goes on, now you have 3, now you have 2, now you have 1, and you're only making so many decisions.
Now, I know you just mentioned dice, and I know a lot of our listeners love dice. What kind of dice are we talking about? Are we like D6s, D20s, or do you have a combination of dice?
The entire game is based off of D6s that we had custom screen printed in Jolly Rancher colors.
Wow.
So the dice are very pretty.
Nice.
All D6s. So if for whatever reason you're wrong and don't like the fancy dice, you can just use any D6s, but you should use the fancy dice.
I'm going to break out my Yahtzee.
I just want to use these craps dice with holes drilled in them.
Exactly. How many people can play this game at once, and how long does a typical game usually take?
Out of the box can play with pretty much any number of players due to a specific advanced rule that I'll talk about in a second. The way that we intend the game is to be played 2 to 6. And then the length of the game entirely depends off of pretty much how many players and how new you are. Experienced players playing a 1v1 game, a 2-player game, can probably finish in 30 to 45 minutes. But new people playing a 4-player game, or pretty much anybody playing a 6-player game, you're probably going to be there for an hour and a half, 2.5 hours.
Right.
So this could be a great game just for like, a Thursday game night or something like that, for people to get together and, they'll get through it in an evening with their friends, right? So it's not something like Risk where you have to, or Monopoly, that could go on for days and days and days.
Oh God.
Yeah, no.
And you hate everyone by the end. No.
One of the big intents we had behind designing the game is that we wanted to take a game and take these concepts and take these items and put them in a box, give you the game, and for you to be able to play it however you want to play it.
That's awesome.
In the base game, just the first one has like 3 or 4 alternate ways to play, including a traditional war game style, where you play, the game traditionally plays on a hex map, but it translates almost directly over to inches. So you can just play like a traditional war game like Warhammer. And then theoretically with that, you can play with as many people as you have pieces for. We offer 100 robots for you to make your teams however you want. If that's not something you want to do, we offer pre-built teams so that you can just grab one out of the box and play. We really wanted to emphasize, this is yours, do with it what you will.
Very cool.
And you used to go to a bunch of, before COVID, you guys were hitting up a lot of conventions, right?
Oh yeah, all the major ones.
What are the major ones?
So there's a bunch of different board game conventions just in the United States. And you can kind of separate them based on more or less 3 categories. You have local, selling, and kind of like the more showcasey kind of convention, at least in my opinion. You have your small local conventions, a few thousand people. Some of the big ones, I'm from Central Massachusetts, so one of the ones around there were like Total Con, Temple Con, Armor Con, small ones that are just local. You probably haven't heard of them. You have the slightly bigger ones that are kind of more showcasey, which would be like your PAXs, PAX East, PAX West, PAX Unplugged, PAX South when that was the thing. Other big conventions like Origins, Dragon Con, Board Game Geek Con, places where you go to sell things or to show things off. And then the third category, which I would give, are the conventions you go to specifically to sell things. And the biggest one of those by far is Gen Con. And that is like the big money-making convention for a lot of these small independent board games. It's like the thing you look forward to every year. It's like your performance review, effectively.
So you pretty much, as I understand it, you go there, you set up your booth, you're kind of there, you got your numbered booth, you've paid to be an
exhibitor.
An exhibitor, thank you. So you pay to have your booth, and people walk by, they ask you questions, they check out the board game, they play it even. Maybe you'll show them a demo, you'll talk about it, give the pitch. But then there's also this, aren't there opportunities for you to go and talk to people who like might invest?
Working in a convention's like this weird little, I don't know if microcosm's the right word, but there's a lot of different things going on, and based on your team, you have to figure out what things you're able to do and what you prioritize over the others, which is why setting up a team for a convention experience is incredibly important, and it should really be done beforehand. Like, get a schedule set up, get everyone figured out what they're doing, because you have a lot of responsibilities and you want to be able to do as many of them as possible. Because you go to a convention, you're here to sell games. You're here to spread awareness that your game exists. You're here to advertise. You're here to probably schmooze with other industry people. You're here to, if you have other games that you're working on, because you never really have just one game. So theoretically, you want a lot of different products, which all have a long development time. So you got to work on them kind of like stacked up.
Right.
What is it like the development time on like an average game anyway? Just I'm curious. Like, you said you've been working about 5 years. Is that like a normal timeline for creating and getting a game out there and doing that, or is that like what's the?
Not gonna lie, 5 years, pretty long. It really depends on a lot of things. It depends on the scope of the game. It depends on the team. If you're like a single person or you're working with like a big team, it depends on the style of game. These light $20 kind of like filler games that are meant to be played in 30 or so minutes will probably have less development time than Twilight Imperium.
Right. Totally.
It varies wildly. I know people who make one game in 5 years. I know people who make 12 games in a year.
Wow.
Like it varies a lot based on who you are, how like kind of driven, like your kind of personality like that. Like, do you have the drive to just do this?
Yeah.
And the amount of time you've got.
Yeah. And that actually leads into something really well with the board game industry, is that it is an industry entirely built on passion, because there's not a lot of money in it unless you work at like a large company.
One of the things you just mentioned, and I really thought was interesting, is like, okay, the whole board game industry is really driven by passion. I'm really curious, like, can we dig in a little bit on you and like why, like, where does that passion for you come from?
Yeah, totally. I come from a at least employment background of retail. I was a professional poker dealer for a while. Customer service. I like helping other people. I like letting other people have a good time. I like to consider myself a fun person. I hope Frank would agree.
You are.
Yeah.
You are.
I think one of the best ways for other people to have a good time is for you to present them with something that they can enjoy. That being a board game makes it really easy. It's everything in a box. It's like, here's the rules. You get this. And it gives you 3 separate experiences just by playing one board game. You get the experience of learning the board game with your friends, which, you know, can be good. You get the experience of actually playing the game, which is the main goal, is to play the game and have it be as fun as possible. You want to have a great experience. And then typically you always, it's a little underlooked, but I think that another really important part of any board game experience is talking about the game afterwards. It's what kind of really drives people to want to play again or to have conversations about it. It's like, oh, you did this thing on the final turn, but I think next game I won't make that mistake.
So Zephyr Games, you guys are a gaming company. This is your kind of flagship product, I'm guessing, right? Aegis. Can you tell us a little bit more about Zephyr Games, and like, do you guys have core values that you ascribe to as a business, and why?
Yeah, so at Zephyr, we try and follow more or less 3 principles that you may have already be able to guess. We try and provide customizable experiences. We want you to be able to play your game the best way you want it. We want your experiences to be affordable. The company started by a bunch of poor college kids and a high school kid. I mean, we didn't have a lot of money. You get that entire box of Aegis back when we first released it for, I think, $50. It was like 100 robots, you know, infinite hours of gameplay, whatever.
Right.
And then the third thing is that we want you to feel like you have a community. We have a really big Discord community that we actively participate on. But we also want to develop games that you can build your own community around. Aegis is a great example for that. It's a competitive game at heart, where you can bring it to places, you know, set up tournaments, play against your friends, fight for whoever the best pilot is, all of that. But then other games that we work on, we're working on another one that is a space opera style of game that takes a very unique twist on a lot of different mechanics that plays a lot of players. It plays up to 7 at the moment in our base box. That's the kind of like thing that you're going to be able to bring somewhere, and it's very eye-catching. You're going to be able to attract people to a table and be like, hey, check out this thing. That was fun. Do you want to play again next week?
Do we have an idea of when that game's going to be coming out?
I'm going to cross my fingers and say there'll be more information next year on 2022.
I'm curious because one of the things you mentioned as well is that this is kind of a labor of love, and everyone there is very passionate about creating games. But I also know this isn't necessarily like the main driver is not all you do. So you balance this around having a career and doing other things and friends and family and playing D&D and all those things, right? How do you find keeping yourself motivated to do this?
It can be hard at times. I'm the kind of guy who jumps around a lot. Like, I'm super into this right now, and then 3 weeks from now, who knows if I'll even own it again. Like, I'm going to hyperfixate on this civilization building video game and stay up and play it 30 hours over the next 3 days, and then not play it in 2 weeks and not touch it for a year.
Yeah, right.
I'm that kind of person. I do that a lot. I try to work on it, but only
I don't know if our nerds can relate to that.
I think I definitely relate to it.
I think every single nerd in this room has those experiences and have those games and those experiences where they're like, man, what happened last week? I just woke up from 40 hours of this video game or 40 hours of this one thing.
Very true.
But I think that really helps people to hear that, you can be that way and still be able to launch a product in a business that actually goes somewhere.
Yeah, definitely. 2 of the things I would say were the most helpful for me and my team at the very least is being able to split your focus while still being productive. For example, my little book of game design ideas has probably 20 games in it. Whenever I lose focus on one thing, I just flip through the book. I'm like, oh, I should have an idea for this. And then I start working on that. And then a week and a half later, oh, but this looks cool.
Mm-hmm.
Totally.
You always have the same end goal, and you're taking different kind of branching paths to get there. It's like, no matter what, I'm developing a game and designing a game, but like, which game am I working on today?
So you've got multiple irons in the fire, so to speak.
Exactly. The second thing that I would say is incredibly helpful is having a very good, and this is probably hard for people who try to do this by themselves, but having a very good kind of supportive rock of a team. Something to kind of anchor you onto a project when you kind of have to put your nose to the grindstone and just get at it. Having that one person that's like, hey, this needs to get done. Can you do that? Yeah, of course. It's just that I was busy doing something else, busy being in air quotes. But I'm more than happy to work on this if it needs to be done, kind of thing.
And I can relate to that so much because I've started a number of projects that have initially been just me, and then I've brought people in before, and they just maybe haven't had the same passion or the same, they aren't that rock, and they haven't been moving things forward. And the way I refer to that person, that rock, is I call them my spirit warrior. Like, I need someone who's spiritually ready to go to war for these kind of ideas and these kind of things. And that's actually one of the reasons why I talked to Frank about this whole nerdpreneur experience, is that I felt that he was like the spirit warrior who would start down this same path and care enough about doing it that things would actually move forward. And he's been doing, he has. I don't know. I feel like we hold each other accountable really well in terms of being able to move a project like this forward. And where I drop the ball, he kind of picks it up. And when he drops the ball, I pick it up. And I think that's such an important point, that if you're in this alone, it could be way harder. But if you have that one person you can count on, man, can you start moving things forward, like that steady progress when you have someone else outside of you that cares about the same thing.
Yeah, at least one. There's also that accountability that goes along with it. You say that you're going to do something to someone. There's times where I tell Chris, "Oh, I'm going to get this thing set up just before we talk next week." And if I didn't have that, I would have pushed it to the next week and maybe even the next.
If you're consistently meeting with a good team, you don't want to show up with nothing done. You want to keep showing up and moving it forward. Let me ask you this then. Because was there a shift for you that you had to make from being able to say oh, I like board games and this is kind of a hobby, to this being I think I could make some money and run this as a business? Was there a shift mentally that you had to make at some point to make that happen?
It kind of came naturally, as strange as that might sound, where I went from doing this for fun, traveling every so often, And then I didn't go to a convention 10 miles away. I went to one in another state. I went from Massachusetts to Philadelphia. I spent 3 days at a house in Maine or whatever, just working on a game with other designers at kind of like a retreat. I move across the country to go work with other coworkers who had also moved. I do this, I do that, and eventually it just kind of fell into place. It's you end up, it's almost like a snowball going down a hill. You start off small, you collect knowledge, you collect knowledge, you collect knowledge, you make connections, you make connections, you make connections, you make a good product, you make a good product, you make a good product. And then the people that you made connections with look back on you as the person who knows things and the person who made a good product.
Right. They remember you.
And now officially you're in the industry.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
And it's just, it entirely depends on when you stop the snowball, how far you'll get.
So you're just sticking with it.
Well, and also, like, it sounds to me like you're stepping into bigger steps, right? Like you're taking bigger steps progressively. Like I really like the way you put it, where you're like, I made a choice to go out of state for this bigger thing. Like you were all of a sudden in a bigger playing field, right? Just because you made that choice. And then, you committed to going to a retreat for a few days. Like, okay, that's a bigger step than maybe you would have taken in the past. And these are like interesting milestones along the way. When you take those bigger steps, all of a sudden you get into a smaller group of people that have taken those bigger steps. And I like also that you mentioned it's about good product, connection, right? You've been working hard and doing these things. Like those three things together, I mean, that's almost anything you want to be successful in. You have to be, good product. You have to be working hard. You have to be making connections. Like that's just always going to be important. But taking those bigger steps into the arena where you're going to be able to do that at a higher level, I think that's really good for people to hear. And for them to understand that when you start making those steps, you can start really making progress.
So I like how what you said earlier around people focusing on multiple things and having many irons in the fire and how that keeps people engaged. Damn it, I forgot my second point.
I think you're embracing the nerd brain there, right? Because so many nerd brains are like distracted by one thing or the other. And like I bounce around to different projects. I know, Frank, you know this about me. I'm just bouncing around to different projects all the time. But not fighting yourself. Like you're not fighting your own natural tendencies with work, which is, I think, one of those barriers a lot of nerds have when they start off. It's like, I can't get anything done because I'm always bouncing around to different things. It's like, well, can you use that as a skill and bounce around to things that you care about and make steady progress, right?
Yeah, the small steps, many small steps over a long period of time, as opposed to lots of steps within the next day or two.
Mm-hmm.
Being able to look at something that you might consider a flaw as a potential advantage in most industries is one of the best traits you can have. For example, if you do have that kind of the mentality, that brain that skips around to a bunch of different things, a lot of people would beat themselves up over that. Like, oh, I can't focus. How am I going to get anything done? I try to look at it as, I'm focusing on multiple things. Right. Like I'm putting in work into a bunch of things. And if I desperately, maybe not even desperately, but if I feel that I need to focus on a single thing, I can. But I really excel at working conceptually or whatever on just a lot of different things and putting a lot of things in a pile and picking out the ones that I think are the best.
Did you have anybody that when you said to them, I'm going to start a board game company, said you were a bit crazy or there's no way that's going to work out? Or like, did you have any haters or people on the other side saying like, how's that going to happen?
A little bit. It's weird. When Zephyr Workshop was started, I came in very early. I was like one of like the founding like 6 or so members, but I wasn't responsible for that big initial push to start it. That was the director, Breeze, who was going to school for game design. He's like, I want to make this game. Aegis was his brainchild. It's his baby. And the rest of us helped him foster it, and it became our weird collective 8-parent child. But when you say to a lot of people, and I think it was different for me because I was the youngest of the group. I was still in high school when this started. Hey, I'm 17. I'm not going to go to college. I'm going to make a board game with my 22-year-old friend.
I can imagine.
How do parents feel about that one, eh?
More supportive than you'd expect. One thing that I've noticed a lot, at least from my parents and my friends' parents and television, is that as long as you have a backup, I feel like you can do most things and have support from your general audience.
Right.
For example, my dad's like, that's going to be really rough for you. I'm fine with this, and I want you to do what you want, but go learn how to deal cards, because that's what he did. So I went and I dealt cards for a year and a half as a day job while I was making board games, and then moved across the country, blah, 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 blah. Here I am.
Yeah.
That is such a great lesson. I heard that somewhere else about how a mom was giving her daughter advice, similar kind of thing. The daughter really didn't know what she wanted to do, actually. So it's slightly different, but didn't know what she wanted to do. But the mom said, hey, whatever you like, you could figure out what you want to do later. Like, that's fine. Like, this doesn't have to be your passion, but you got to do something that you can do anywhere around the world so that wherever you are, you can be making money. And this was, this person's a bit older now. So this was back in like the 70s or so. But that advice was so true. She ended up becoming a beautician, and then she could do that anywhere in the world. Valuable skill. I mean, I wish I had been given that advice. I mean, I've done okay, but I mean, I wish that I had been given that kind of advice, because that is so clear. It makes so much sense.
I think that's true, because I went to theater school and acting, which was not necessarily my parents' favorite idea. They were like, what are you going to do with that? I don't know. I guess I'll go act. But, the idea of getting into being a professional actor and making a living as an actor was just not really realistic, because theater is not high pay at all. So one of the things that was really valuable to me was picking up the skill of sales, because you need to be able to sell anywhere. And what's funny is both my parents are salespeople. So what did they tell me I should probably learn how to do? You should learn how to sell. You should go to business school. You should do these things, because that's what they know, and it worked well for them. And so same thing with your parents, right? Like, your dad's like, you should learn to do cards, because that's what he knew, that it would be effective, right? And so I think there's sometimes that disconnect when parents give advice, and we rarely want to listen to what our parents give us advice around when we're young. But then it's funny. It's like, yeah, they're only seeing their perspective and what they know. Generally, they'll say, like, you should do the same thing as what I did, because I made these choices. And if your parents are in a great position and they're successful and they've had a great life and built up your life and encouraged you to, then it probably is good to take some of that advice and listen. If your parents are not where you want to be, maybe it's not, right? Like, it depends on who your parents are and what kind of person they are. But I think that's a really interesting tidbit, because all three of us have had similar kind of experiences like that.
Yeah. So as far as haters, though, did you have anyone that kind of came up? And some people get inspired by people trying to shoot them down or give them doubt, or some people, they take it to heart, and it creates quite this obstacle that they have to overcome. Did you have any haters that really left an imprint on you? You don't need to name them, but just the experience.
Haters is a strong word. I think the closest thing I can think of isn't even a person. It's just a kind of general stigma, because we've had a very big resurgency of, nerd culture, geeky stuff, things being very popular that weren't popular in like the 80s or whatever, before I was born. But that resurgence has been relatively recent, like in the past 10 years or so, with, all of the games and board games leaving, like, there's more than just the game of life and stuff like that. And I think that there's that general stigma around, you're going to go make board games? Oh, like Scrabble? And it's like, well, no. It's a lot of uncertainty in the time, that I think a lot of which has passed at this point, especially in my kind of inner circles now. Everyone knows what I do. And they're kind of like, oh, yeah, I know these things. My dad wants to play board games now. He wants to try playing board games. Like,
that's awesome.
Not Life and Scrabble and Connect 4, but like he wants to play Cartographers and Bullet and stuff like that, like hobby board games. Which I think says a lot.
And I think the resonance of that is that people see you moving through and getting success. And again, I think that if you're doing that and making progress and actually doing your passion, like taking action on it, then everyone around you who was questioning at first will start to get on board, because they see the progress and they see the results. But it's like, if you're not doing that, then they're probably just giving you advice that you should listen to. It's like, because if you're not taking action on moving your passion forward, then maybe it's not really your passion, or maybe it's not really what you want.
I will say that you really, I know, before we move on to the next section here, Ryan, you were the first person I met who was a board game designer and maker, and that, to me, you were that person that was, I was like, oh, this is a thing, like this is like independent game designers can do this. And I had this, there was this period of disbelief that probably lasted about a week or two while we were working together in the beginning. And then eventually you told me more about it, and I hung out with you more, and then I met your other friends that were in this, that are in Zephyr. And I just remember thinking like, wow, like these are people like me that are doing this. This is not that far from the realm of possibility. And you have really, I mean, not to just like inflate your ego here, but you've really kind of inspired me for my own projects, my own mechanics that I've wanted to build and turn into something. And that is, I mean, that's exactly the kind of thing that we've been talking about, is that you do more, you go farther, and you meet with other people that have done the same thing, and then whatever happens, you inspire, you collaborate, or whatever.
And that's really what this podcast is about, is getting to have people share stories that, like, Ryan's not that much different probably than a lot of the people who are just listening to this podcast and saying like, should I at 17 go to college, or should I try and pursue this thing that I think maybe I could do? Or like, and I guess the thing I want to say about this podcast is I think it's about bringing these stories to light, is that we can bring people in and hear that, you know what, Ryan's not that different from me or you or any other listener here, but there are things that you've done to be able to create success in that area. And that's what we're trying to get out, is that you can create your own nerdy passion into a business, start moving it into a reality, and there are ways in which to do it and strategies. I did want to ask you about advice, because it sounds like you've got some good advice over the years, and we've heard some of that already. What's the worst advice you've ever heard, I guess, in your industry or in your niche, that you would tell people to avoid?
I think I probably have two things. The more broad one is games are for everybody. Don't be like a gatekeeper at all, because you're already coming from a history of a disenfranchised, air quotes, people. The satanic panic of whenever that happened.
Yeah, D&D. In case you don't know, D&D used to be the satanic panic for our younger viewers is basically when in the 80s D&D came around and everyone thought it was like a satanic game, and so there was like newspaper articles about kids sacrificing people due to this D&D game, and it was all BS and not real, but there was like a little panic around it.
It scared a lot of more religious or tight
Republicans. It scared a lot of Republicans.
I was going to say conservatives, but it definitely scared a lot of parents that had pretty tight control over their children.
Yeah.
You have things like that. You have the portrayal of nerds in movies and popular media and stuff like that. LARPing being just a bunch of sticky nerds and fat guys beating each other up with foam swords and wearing tissue boxes, like stuff like that. And then you come from that kind of a background. Think about the roots of the things you enjoy, and then think about someone new who's trying to come into the hobby that you've been enjoying for a long time. Why would you not want that new person to enjoy it with you? Especially if they're already coming from a disenfranchised group. It should be, gaming in general should be for everybody. So don't be a gatekeeper.
I love that.
What's some of the worst advice maybe you've heard in your industry or niche?
Worst advice would probably be in regards to playtesting and board games. You'll hear a lot of people write off certain things playtesters say, such as they don't know what they're doing, they're unexperienced, blah, 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 blah. That has some merit depending on specific factors of what you're trying to get feedback on. Like, for example, if you're playtesting a game that you've been working on for 3 weeks and someone says, I wish the cards had art, well, there's probably not art yet. That's fine. But you have to always keep in mind that when you're showing people a game and they have a intrinsic dislike of a certain thing at their first playthrough, and you're like, well, that thing makes sense later on when you've played the game more, so I'm just going to not count that. That's horrible, because the most people that'll see your game will play it once. And then if that one experience that they had was bad because they haven't played it 5 times and they don't have this like intrinsic knowledge that you're going to assume people have, and this is a lot of pitfalls newer designers fall into, they're never going to play it again. And you're going to get bad reviews online, you're going to not sell copies.
So if people are assuming that their audience knows things that they know, that is a pitfall. That is a thing to avoid. And instead, make sure that your audience, when they're trying out the game, when they're play testing, that they have everything that they will need when they are first starting off to enjoy it that first time, instead of assuming, oh, well, yeah, sure, the first time is not that fun, but the second time is so much more fun. Don't assume that. Just make sure that that first time they play is fun.
That's very important. And a lot of it also breaks down to just don't write off player feedback
Yeah.
because of pretty much any reason that, at least in my opinion, involves gameplay. There's pretty much no reason that shouldn't at least have some sort of bearing on future decisions.
Yeah, I mean, even the stuff that you get back when you were saying like around art, it's like, well, yeah, we can forgive that because it's 3 weeks old, right?
Mhm.
But it's still real feedback where it's like, we better get some art on these things. Like you don't want to discount any of that feedback that you're getting because it's direct feedback from a first playthrough. I know in our business where we launch products online, literally like the feedback we get from our clients is the most important thing that we do for designing our products, because if you don't, you're likely to spend so much time designing a product that not only they don't want, but also they don't, that doesn't create the transformation that they're hoping for. Whereas when you do take that feedback, even if it doesn't seem right at first, it is right. Like there's probably some real reasons why you want to take that to heart.
It kind of follows over like the generic old like food service kind of thing, or like retail thing you'd hear from like long ago. It's like the customer's always right. And that's not true in most situations. But the customer isn't necessarily always right, but they always have a feeling. And it's your job as the playtest runner to figure out they have this issue. What is causing that issue and why do they feel this? You're not looking for fixes. You're looking for causes.
Nice. I like that. So what are you especially nerdy about outside of your core business?
Coming with the territory, I do play a lot of tabletop games. Other than that, what do I like? I like miniature painting, which I guess is kind of adjacent.
Like Warhammer 40K miniature?
Like Warhammer 40K miniatures, which makes it very adjacent. I do like cooking. Cooking's really fun, and I'm big into food history. Food history is really interesting to me. I do have a little bit of an issue where I don't like to read very much, and a lot of food histories in books. So someone make me the food history
podcast
shonen, long-form shonen anime, and I'll watch all 800 episodes.
If you had 1 million followers, what advice would you give them?
1 million followers. It would probably be take a break. You see this thing a lot, at least in my experience, with like kind of older millennials, people in like their low to mid 30s. That's very like, get to the grind. I need to be doing this. Why am I not being productive at this exact second? And I notice that a lot with my coworkers at Zephyr and my friends, things like that. If you're going to live your entire life just pushing forward, you're never going to have a chance to look at behind you to see all that you've actually accomplished. You really need to take a break and not beat yourself up over it. There's zero reason for you to work 7 days a week, 12 hours a day, or just any obscene amount of effort. Take a break, go for a walk, go on a vacation, just chill and watch TV for a day. You do not have to just kill yourself day after day trying to be productive and then beat yourself up when you're not.
Amen, dude. That is so that is something I've been really trying to channel in the last few years and really accept. And I mean, decent amount of therapy has gone into the demon that I have of productivity. The voice always trying to make me productive despite it being the weekend or a Sunday. And I've had to have friends kind of watch my friends relax on a Sunday, and my initial reaction being, how can you nap on a Sunday? How are you okay with napping for most of the Sunday? And they would say, oh, I'm resting, I'm recharging. And I'm like, yeah, but you could be busy, you could be productive.
This is so funny, because I had a conversation with someone literally right before this when I was having brunch about this exact thing, where so many people, the only way they become productive is beating themselves up.
Whoa.
And it's legitimately a weird thing. I relate to it because I was like that for years and years and years. It's like, I need to beat myself up in order to be productive. And like, if I'm not, I don't have permission to feel good. And that's like a really bad recipe to cook your life in. All right.
Yeah.
It's like, what you want to do is find ways to be productive for sure, but also like allow yourself those times. Because why are we being productive? But to be able to have those times where we enjoy ourselves and earn those breaks so that you feel good. And breaks are part of your success plan. I think that people forget that when you are putting breaks in and intentional rests and times that you're working hard and then times that you're not, you're actually setting yourself up for success by doing that and making sure you have the things that make you feel happy and are the best person you can be to create the best results. Finding different ways to be kind to yourself, which is I think the message you're hearing here, like to be kind while you're going through the process, allow yourself to continue to move forward without beating yourself up. I think that's great advice. And I appreciate, Ryan, that you brought that up because I think it really, really hits home for a lot of people.
Let's go ahead and transition over to the D100 and the rapid fire, Chris. So Ryan, if you wouldn't mind, go ahead and roll a D100, please. Do you have the two 10s or do you have an actual D100?
I have a Googleable thing that I found online.
Perfect.
I got a 94.
I'd like to know what was the first character, it could be for any tabletop role-playing game, but what was the first character you ever played, you ever made and played?
Ooh, first character. I don't remember his name, which is a shame. I would play very frequently. This was my go-to character for pretty much anything in any role-playing game that allowed it. So any fantasy-themed role-playing would be a halfling barbarian wielding 2 axes, riding a dog.
That sounds awesome.
And it was bad, but it was fun.
Why would it be bad? I'd imagine that because halflings, are we talking 5th edition?
Yeah. So here's why it's bad. Level 1 barbarian on a mount with two axes, 1 in each hand, and I'm pretty sure you cannot move the mount unless it's a bonus action, if I remember correctly.
Unless you command it.
Unless you command it.
Yeah, right.
So you can't actually attack with your second axe. And you also are wielding 2 of them, so you can't versatile your first one.
Oh.
But I still did it for fun.
Well, the concept is badass. So I think that's
the concept is very badass.
Yeah.
And the other thing is that if you use gold to buy your original character, you have just enough gold for the equipment that I mentioned, which is 2 axes and a dog and barding.
Nice.
And you have nothing else.
What would piss them off? What would get them raging?
Anybody taller.
See, that's why it's fun.
That's good. That is
so
great.
A lot of things.
Oh wow, that's awesome. All right, well, let's go. We're gonna go ahead and switch over to the rapid fire. So in this section, we've got a long list, but you don't have to roll anything. So I'm just gonna say a couple questions to you, and we're gonna do 5 of them. We'll start with 5. So Yoda or Obi-Wan?
Yoda.
DC or Marvel?
Marvel.
Game of Thrones, books, or the TV show?
TV show. I can't read.
That's right. What superpower would you want?
Earthbending.
Ooh, nice.
Interesting.
If you could fly or turn invisible, which one would you choose?
Fly.
So smart.
Without a doubt.
Thank you. Flying's so much better.
And probably one of the most controversial questions, coffee or tea?
Coffee.
Nice.
Without a doubt.
What's the best munchie?
God. Goldfish.
Wow. All right, cool. That's like wouldn't have been on my top list at all, but that's cool.
I was very torn there.
What was the other one?
So there's 2 others. One of the other ones would have been the soy sauce wasabi almonds from I think Blue Diamond, that I refer to as flavor blasted almonds. And then there's actually a snack called Munchies.
Oh,
that I haven't had in a long time because I don't know if it still exists. Munchies was the best munchie.
It does.
That's the one that has like the Cheetos and the pretzel and
the
sun chips in it, right? Like it's
like the better Chex Mix, yeah.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Oh man, those so dangerous. Destroy a whole family size bag.
That's awesome. Okay, what Hogwarts house would you be in?
Hufflepuff.
I really want to know how come.
Very inclusive. Not evil.
Yeah.
Can't read. A theme apparently.
Immediately out of Ravenclaw. Yeah.
And the best, which is Hufflepuff.
Nice. What are your 3 favorite pizza toppings?
Pineapple, bacon, banana peppers.
Ooh, team pineapple. All right. I like it.
Now, I'm really tempted, just because I know Ryan, I'm really tempted to ask this one question that we don't have on the list.
Sure.
Is Is a calzone
I knew that's what this was going to be about. Go
a
ahead.
sandwich?
A calzone is not a sandwich.
What is a calzone then?
A calzone is pretty much a folded pizza, but it's not, because typically calzones, at least to my knowledge, don't have sauce in them.
So then when people take a pizza slice and they fold it in half, is that then a sandwich?
No, because a sandwich is between two separate pieces of leavened bread.
Okay, I don't know where this is going, but how could a calzone ever be a sandwich?
Right?
Like, I don't understand how that's even a question.
How
Do
about
you have
a hot
opinions
dog?
on this, Frank?
What about a hot dog? Is
A hot dog is not a sandwich.
No,
All right,
not at
what
all.
Then what about a hamburger? Is that a sandwich?
A hamburger's a sandwich. It's a hamburger
style
sandwich.
of sandwich, yes.
Okay, but you said it's between two pieces of bread. So
Yep.
a hot dog is between two pieces of bread.
No,
And I
it's
will
not.
admit-
No, it is in a V of bread, right? There's like a connection. It's more of like a fold.
Someone like slices a concave shape into a piece
It's
of
closer
bread.
to a taco than it is to a sandwich, in my opinion.
Oh, Ryan, would you care to comment?
I probably shouldn't. A hot dog is not a sandwich because the bread is connected on the bottom. So it's one piece of bread with a cut in it.
Okay.
Now, I've had this question asked before. What happens when the bread breaks? It has not become a sandwich. It is now a broken hot dog.
So it
Yeah.
still remains within the universe of hot dog, but it is a different state of the hot dog.
Yes. It's one of the hot dog's three forms of matter.
There's no way that a calzone could ever be a sandwich.
None at all.
In any light, in my opinion. I don't know if
But
you
it
have a-
is between two pieces of doughy substance. some
No,
would
no.
argue.
It is one whole piece of doughy substance that does not have separations at all. It's much its own thing, right? Like in the world of calzones, it is just its own thing. You can't say like, oh, is it a sandwich? It has no
It just falls into
subcategory.
pastry.
No, it's not. It's just its own thing.
So it's not even a
calzone.
pastry.
It's more like a stuffed bread.
I mean, I just don't think if we're trying to come up with food genuses, I don't think it's under any other genus. It is its own thing, like the duck-billed platypus. It's just there. You know.
I think I would. It depends on how you do your classification, because if we classify purely on structure, I'd probably agree. But if we classify based on origin, structure, and contents and
Ingredients.
general flavor profile, I'd probably put it as an offshoot of a pizza.
I mean, I definitely believe calzones are just pizzas that someone fucked up.
Calzones are delicious, though.
I mean, I haven't had a good calzone. I'm not gonna lie, and
I've had some great ones.
I've almost gotten into fistfights over is a hot dog a sandwich.
this was I never had met anyone who was so passionate about this topic until I met Ryan, and then it just makes me smile every time.
Thanks so much, Ryan. I appreciate you doing this. And last thing, is there anything else you want to plug, or anything else you want people or our audience to know about you or about your game or anything coming up?
Look out follow Zephyr Workshop on social media, and look out for Kickstarters coming next year.
Yeah. Oh, and you know what? Because this one's always near and dear to me. Star Trek or Star Wars?
If I had to pick, it'd be Star Wars. I hate Star Trek.
You did not have to say that last part. How could you?
It's so boring, in my opinion.
Okay, all right, fair enough. Star Wars is much better for the masses.
I don't really like Star Wars that much either.
Okay.
That's
All right,
the.
I feel
I
a
like
little
Bad
better.
Batch.
How about Babylon 5?
I've never seen it.
That's like basically the go-to answer. Every time I bring up Babylon 5, everyone's like, I've never seen it.
Oh, you're gonna hate when you ask me if I've seen Firefly.
Oh my God, really? You haven't seen it?
That was going to be our next question. Is Firefly overrated or underrated?
I'm gonna say overrated. You don't need to watch it.
We just lost all of our fan base.
Everyone's gone. Good thing this is the end of the episode.
Yeah,
Thanks,
we got it.
everybody.
Keep it nerdy. Keep it nerdy. Keep it real nerdy.
Thank you for listening to Nerdpreneur. Be sure to subscribe wherever you found us and leave a review on Apple Podcasts. Every review helps our show grow. You can follow and chat with us on Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube at Nerdpreneur Podcast. Nerdpreneur is a labor of passion, and Chris and I would love to keep this thing going. So if you want us to continue making content, You can support us by going to patreon.com/nerdpreneur and become a member of the board. Members of the board get shout-outs, they can submit rapid-fire questions, they get behind-the-scenes peeks, and we record super fun and valuable content exclusive to our board members.
We love all of you nerds. Keep it nerdy.
Nerdpreneur, you know I love my work. Life's a game, so I'ma take my turn. Nerds deserve to put the passion first, so let them rap first so they can all be heard.